Have you ever felt the weight of failure crushing your spirit, leaving you stranded in despair? What if I told you that every door that closes, every plan that collapses, and every dream that seems shattered is not a dead end but a guidepost? Failure is not punishment, it is an invitation. It is life's way of redirecting you toward the door that was always meant for you, the path that will awaken your true potential if only you dare to step through it. True wisdom often arrives disguised as failure. What we perceive as defeat is not the enemy, but a teacher in its most uncompromising form. The moments when our plans collapse or our efforts seem wasted are the moments when life is stripping away illusions. We are forced to confront who we really are, to see our limitations, and to recognize the patterns we have ignored. Failure does not diminish us, it exposes the raw material from which our true strength can be built. It asks us to observe, to learn, and to move forward with clarity rather than clinging to past pride or imagined security. What appears as a setback is often a redirection toward a greater opportunity. When one door closes, the instinct is to knock harder, to demand that life give us what we think we deserve. But in this insistence, we blind ourselves to the door that is quietly opening elsewhere. Life's intelligence is precise, and every failure is a signal pointing us away from what would have trapped us and toward what will elevate us. It is not punishment, it is guidance. By trusting the flow rather than resisting it, we allow the hidden currents of life to carry us to spaces we could not have reached on our own. Failure forces us to release fear, and in this release, we gain freedom. The fear of falling, of making mistakes, of being judged binds our potential to the ordinary and the safe. But when failure arrives, it strips away the false safety net we cling to, leaving us exposed, raw and fully alive. In that vulnerability lies clarity. When we dare to confront our failures without fleeing, without blaming, without rationalizing, we discover reservoirs of courage and resilience we never knew existed. Each failure becomes a stepping stone, a marker of the journey toward a more authentic life. In the crucible of failure, we are invited to align with our true purpose. Persistence is not blindly continuing what does not work. It is learning, recalibrating, and moving forward with discernment. Failure clarifies our priorities, strips away distractions, and forces us to focus on what genuinely matters. It is a mirror that reflects both our weaknesses and our hidden potential. In this reflection, we begin to understand that success is not measured by what we achieve, but by how fully we respond to life's challenges, how gracefully we rise when confronted with collapse. Every failure carries gifts, though they may be invisible at first. The lessons, insights, relationships, and inner transformations it brings are priceless, but only if we are willing to receive them. When we step through the door that opens after failure with awareness, courage and gratitude, we find that the ending we feared was merely the beginning of something far greater than we imagined. The path illuminated by failure is never easy, but it is always precise, always real, and always capable of taking us to a life that is deeper, richer, and more aligned with who we truly are. Life often gives us the illusion that we are in control, that with enough planning, effort, and discipline, we can shape every outcome exactly as we desire. We build our schedules, set our goals, and measure our progress as if the world must bend to our will. Yet failure has a way of shattering this illusion, revealing how fragile our sense of control truly is. It shows us that no matter how precise our calculations or how determined our intentions, life moves according to a rhythm far greater than our understanding. The more we cling to control, the more resistance we face when reality shifts unexpectedly. When failure arrives, it exposes the limits of our grasp. We may think we are steering our lives, but often we are being steered by forces we cannot see, circumstances, other people's choices, or the natural unfolding of time. It is in these moments of collapse that we realize our plans were only a fragment of what is possible. Life's intelligence does not conform to our expectations, and any attempt to impose rigid control only blinds us to the opportunities that lie beyond the disruption. Failure strips away the pretense, leaving us to face the raw truth that we are not as powerful as we imagine. This confrontation with reality forces a shift in perspective. Instead of demanding that life obey us, we learn to observe it, to respond with awareness rather than reaction. Control becomes a tool, not a master. We begin to see that surrendering to the unfolding does not mean giving up, it means moving with life rather than against it. Failure teaches patience and humility, showing that strength is not in domination, but in understanding the boundaries of our influence and working skillfully within them. As we navigate these limits, we discover freedom. The need to control everything is exhausting and isolating, but when we let go, we open ourselves to possibility. Failure is a mirror that reflects both our insistence and our opportunity. It challenges us to release the rigidity of our expectations and to embrace uncertainty with curiosity. In the space created by letting go, creativity, insight and innovation emerge, revealing paths that were invisible when we were trapped by the desire to control. Ultimately, the illusion of control is a lesson in trust. Failure teaches that life cannot be predicted, but it can be engaged. The more we attempt to hold on to outcomes, the more life slips through our fingers. When we accept that control is never absolute, we step into a deeper intelligence that guides our decisions and actions. We learn to move with the currents rather than against them, to recognize failure not as a threat but as a signal, and to find the door that opens precisely because we dare to release our false sense of mastery. What seems like a setback is rarely what it appears to be. Life has a way of disguising its guidance in moments of collapse, and what feels like a door closing is often a sign pointing to a path we could not have seen before. When plans fail or expectations are shattered, it is easy to fall into despair, but this is precisely when the perspective shifts. The surface of reality shows loss, but beneath it lies the invitation to move in a direction that aligns with deeper purpose. When we encounter failure, it forces us to pause and question our assumptions. We realize that the path we were pursuing may not have been right for us, or that our attachment to an outcome was blinding us to possibilities. Setbacks shake the confidence we place in rigid plans and force us to see beyond our limited vision. The very thing we thought was a defeat becomes the lens through which clarity emerges. Every disappointment carries within it the seeds of insight, but only those willing to see differently can recognize them. Perspective is not something that changes automatically, it must be chosen. We can either allow ourselves to be crushed by events or we can use them as tools to uncover hidden doors. A failure is a mirror reflecting where our vision was narrow, where our expectations were rigid, and where our understanding of life was incomplete. By stepping back and observing without judgment, we begin to see patterns, connections, and opportunities that were invisible when we were trapped in the immediacy of disappointment. As this shift takes hold, we discover that redirection is not a setback but an opening. Life does not push us into random failures, it nudges us toward what is necessary for growth. The doors that open after disappointment often lead to experiences, relationships, and achievements that were impossible to reach through the original path. When perspective is shifted, what once seemed like a loss becomes a catalyst for transformation. a mechanism through which life aligns us with our true potential. The power of shifting perspective lies in choice. We can cling to the pain of what did not happen, or we can embrace the unseen possibilities that arise from it. By reframing failure as guidance rather than punishment, we step into a space where opportunities multiply and direction becomes clear. Every setback, every disappointment is a signpost pointing to the door we were meant to find. Those who recognize this truth move forward not burdened by loss, but empowered by the wisdom that failure alone can bring. Fear has a way of keeping us trapped in patterns that limit our growth. The fear of failing, of looking foolish, of falling short binds the mind to what is safe and familiar. It whispers that any deviation from the known path is dangerous, convincing us that comfort is more valuable than possibility. In this state, life becomes narrow, predictable, and ultimately small. The very thing we fear, the loss, the mistake, the collapse, becomes a wall that separates us from the life we are capable of living. When fear grips the mind, it distorts reality. Every challenge appears insurmountable, every risk seems too great, and every opportunity hidden behind uncertainty is ignored. The mind convinces itself that failure is an end rather than a beginning. This is how fear keeps mediocrity in place. It chains our vision, dims our courage, and convinces us that staying within the familiar is the safest choice, even when it starves the soul. Fear is not an enemy to fight with anger, it is a mirror showing us where we are trapped by our own resistance. Releasing fear requires courage, not in the absence of danger, but in the willingness to move forward despite it. When we confront fear, step into uncertainty, and embrace the possibility of failure, the mind expands. What once seemed terrifying becomes manageable. What once seemed impossible becomes a challenge we are capable of facing. In the space created by letting go, clarity emerges. We see that fear was never a barrier imposed by life, but a limitation created by the mind, and once released, it opens possibilities that were always present. Embracing failure transforms fear into freedom. Every time we risk, stumble or fall, we learn that life does not end, that the consequences are not as severe as imagined, and that the capacity within us is greater than we believed. Fear loses its grip as we encounter reality directly without the distortions of imagined disaster. The mind expands, vision widens, and the heart opens to new opportunities, to experiences that would never be possible if we remained imprisoned by fear. The release of fear is a practice of trust. Trust in oneself, trust in the unfolding of life, and trust in the lessons that come through every stumble. When fear is no longer the guide, choices are made from awareness rather than avoidance. Every risk taken, every failure embraced becomes a doorway to growth, understanding, and transformation. In this state, life is no longer limited by what we imagine might go wrong, but enriched by the courage to move boldly into what can go right. Failure strips away the masks we wear and the illusions we cling to. When plans collapse and expectations are shattered, the face we present to the world becomes irrelevant. In this raw space, the truth of who we are emerges. The traits we never recognized, the capacities we doubted, and the inner resources we ignored rise to the surface. Failure does not create these qualities, it simply reveals them, forcing us to confront the depth of our own potential. In moments of defeat, patience becomes visible. The mind that is used to instant gratification learns to endure. The heart that demands comfort and certainty begins to wait, observe, and adapt. The lessons of patience are often harsh because they come from experience rather than theory. Yet through repeated setbacks, we develop the ability to hold ourselves steady, to remain calm under pressure, and to persist without immediate reward. Failure teaches that growth cannot be rushed. and that endurance is itself a form of strength. Resilience grows in the soil of repeated struggle. Each stumble, each disappointment, and each misstep becomes a test of our capacity to recover. We learn that falling does not define us. What defines us is the act of rising again. The mind becomes flexible, the heart stronger, and the spirit more courageous. Resilience is not innate but cultivated, and failure is the forge in which it is honed. Without struggle, we might never recognize the extraordinary depth of our ability to withstand, adapt, and continue. Failure also uncovers hidden creativity and ingenuity. When familiar solutions fail, the mind is forced to seek new pathways. The person who has never been challenged may never know the extent of their own imagination or problem-solving capacity. Setbacks push us beyond comfort, revealing the talents and insights we might never have discovered. In this way, failure becomes a guide, not just to resilience, but to the unexplored potential within us. Through failure, self-discovery becomes inevitable. The strengths, patience, resilience, and creativity that emerge are not temporary reactions but lasting transformations. They reshape our understanding of ourselves and our relationship with life. Every failure leaves behind a map of who we are, who we can become, and what is truly possible when we dare to face reality fully and without avoidance. It is in this process that ordinary experience is transformed into profound self-knowledge. Life has its own rhythm, and it rarely aligns with our schedules or expectations. We plan, we push, we insist, believing that persistence alone will bring results. Yet some doors remain closed no matter how hard we knock. These moments are not failures but signals from life, showing that the timing is not yet right. There is a natural order to how experiences unfold, and forcing a door open too early only leads to frustration, wasted energy, and missed opportunities. Failure teaches us to recognize this timing. When what we desire does not materialize, it is a subtle reminder to pause, reflect, and release attachment. The insistence on immediate outcomes blinds us to the lessons hidden in delay. What feels like a setback is often preparation, a period in which unseen forces align and shape us for what lies ahead. Each moment of waiting, each encounter with resistance, carries within it the shaping of our capacity, understanding and readiness for the doors that will open in the future. The process of letting go is essential. We must release our grip on what we think we want, not because it is worthless, but because clinging prevents us from receiving what life is truly offering. Failure forces us to confront illusions, to question assumptions, and to surrender to the flow of reality. In letting go, we create space for the right opportunities to enter, for the doors that open naturally and effortlessly, carrying with them the potential we could not have imagined. Patience becomes our greatest ally in this process. Timing cannot be rushed, and the more we attempt to control it, the more we encounter resistance. Life's intelligence knows exactly when we are ready to step through, and the doors that open at the right time lead to growth, transformation, and fulfillment that could not have been achieved earlier. Each failure and delay prepares us, owning our awareness, refining our intentions, and strengthening our capacity to walk through the opportunities when they finally arrive. Understanding the right timing changes the way we approach life. We learn that disappointment is not a denial, but a pause, a signal to align ourselves with the natural flow. What was once missed or delayed becomes essential, and what was forced becomes irrelevant. Failure and patience together reveal that life's doors open not when we demand them, but when we are ready, when we have shed illusions, and when our vision matches the possibilities waiting beyond the threshold. Many people mistake stubbornness for strength, continuing blindly toward a goal without regard for the signals life is sending. They repeat the same actions over and over, believing that sheer force of will produce results. This is not persistence, it is obsession. Obsession narrows vision, consumes energy, and blinds the mind to alternatives. It traps individuals in patterns that guarantee repeated failure. While true persistence requires discernment and clarity, failure becomes a teacher when it is observed rather than ignored. Each misstep, each obstacle carries information about what is not working, about assumptions that need correction, and about methods that must be refined. Blind repetition denies this knowledge and perpetuates frustration. Real persistence listens, it adapts, it tests, learns and recalibrates. Those who persist wisely understand that movement without awareness is wasted effort, while thoughtful adjustment creates momentum that is both sustainable and powerful. The difference between obsession and persistence lies in flexibility. Obsession is rigid, driven by ego and desire, unable to bend in response to reality. Persistence is disciplined yet fluid, able to absorb lessons from failure and modify its course. It does not insist on the same path when circumstances demand change. It maintains commitment to the goal, but not at the cost of judgment, clarity or growth. Flexibility becomes the engine of progress, turning obstacles into opportunities and failure into guidance. Persistence requires patience as well as courage. It is not about speed or immediate success, but about steady, intelligent progress over time. Obsession seeks instant results and punishes delay, while persistence endures and thrives through the slow, sometimes invisible work that produces lasting outcomes. The moments when progress seems stalled are often the most crucial, as they allow reflection, refinement, and the building of strength that will carry one through future challenges. True persistence transforms failure into a teacher, setbacks into lessons, and obstacles into tools for growth. It recognizes that success is rarely linear, that the path often curves and turns unexpectedly, and that the most enduring achievements emerge from adaptability and learning rather than sheer force. Obsession limits vision, but persistence expands it, allowing life's intelligence to guide action, revealing opportunities that blind insistence would never perceive. Failure exposes the gap between who we are and what we are chasing. When plans collapse or recognition is denied, it becomes clear how often our actions are driven by approval, reward, or expectation rather than genuine purpose. This dissonance creates frustration and emptiness. In confronting failure, we are forced to examine whether our energy is flowing toward what truly matters or simply toward what looks impressive or acceptable to others. The pressure of disappointment compels reflection. When external validation fades or is withheld, the mind is left with only the truth of intention. It asks whether the efforts made were authentic expressions of our capacity or merely attempts to meet the demands of circumstance. Failure strips away pretense, leaving raw clarity about what is meaningful. In this clarity, we find the first step toward alignment, the willingness to act from purpose rather than appearance. Realignment requires courage and honesty. It is not enough to recognize the gap, action must follow. Decisions, habits, and priorities must be evaluated and reshaped so that they resonate with personal vision rather than societal approval. This process often feels uncomfortable because it challenges long-held patterns and attachments. Yet discomfort is a necessary companion to growth. Without it, the realignment remains superficial and failure will continue to repeat until authentic balance is achieved. When inner alignment is embraced, energy becomes focused and life gains direction. Actions no longer scatter in pursuit of external approval or fleeting satisfaction. Instead, every effort, decision, and choice flows from clarity of purpose. Failure, once feared, becomes a tool that reveals misalignment early. saving energy and exposing where focus should shift. Life moves more efficiently and meaningfully when guided from within rather than dictated by outside influence. Alignment transforms failure into a compass. Each collapse, each setback becomes a signal rather than a punishment. It points to where our intentions are out of harmony with our true self and invites recalibration. Through this process, the individual learns to act from depth, to trust inner guidance, and to pursue goals that resonate with authentic purpose. In this state, failure is no longer a threat but a guidepost, shaping life in ways external validation never could. Failure often arrives dressed in discomfort, disappointment, and loss, making it difficult to see the value it carries. At first, the mind reacts with frustration and resistance, unable to recognize that every collapse contains hidden lessons. What appears as misfortune may actually be a turning point, offering insights that cannot be accessed through success alone. Life uses failure to strip away illusions and expose the truths that are often overlooked when everything seems to be going according to plan. In the quiet aftermath of setbacks, awareness grows. We begin to see how failure exposes assumptions, habits and patterns that have limited our growth. The relationships we depend on, the goals we pursue, and the strategies we trust all come under scrutiny. This exposure is not punishment, it is guidance. It teaches discernment and clarity, revealing what is authentic and what has been sustaining only illusion. Patience becomes the lens through which these gifts can be recognized, for insight rarely arrives instantly. Every failure carries the potential to deepen connection. Missteps can bring unexpected relationships, mentorships, or collaborations into our lives, or strengthen bonds that might otherwise have remained superficial. When we face challenges openly, vulnerability invites authenticity, honesty, and trust. These outcomes, hidden behind the veil of difficulty, are often more valuable than immediate success. Gratitude emerges when we begin to see failure as a provider rather than a thief offering what success alone cannot. The lessons embedded in failure are multifaceted. They teach humility, resilience, and self-awareness. They remind us that we are not in total control and that reliance on external validation is fragile. Each challenge presents an opportunity to refine perception, adjust strategy, and cultivate strength of character. Over time, this accumulation of understanding creates a foundation of wisdom that is durable, profound, and deeply practical. The discomfort of failure transforms into a quiet gratitude for the unseen guidance it provides. Recognizing the hidden gifts of failure changes our relationship with life. Instead of resisting or fearing it, we learn to embrace setbacks as signals of growth, openings for insight, and invitations to higher understanding. Gratitude in disguise transforms failure from a source of suffering into a wellspring of awareness. Every collapse becomes a teacher, every disappointment a guide, and every misstep a door to insights that patience and reflection alone can reveal. Failure acts as a crucible, exposing every weakness, limitation, and hidden fear. In its heat, the layers of pretense, comfort, and superficial achievement are burned away, leaving the raw material of the self. What remains is unrefined, vulnerable, and authentic. It is in this exposure that transformation begins, for the individual can no longer hide behind illusion or avoidance. The intensity of failure forces confrontation with reality, revealing the elements that must change for growth to occur. The process of transformation demands courage. It is not enough to experience failure, one must face it fully, absorb its lessons, and allow it to shape perspective. Resistance prolongs suffering, but acceptance creates clarity. Through repeated confrontation with obstacles, weaknesses are recognized and addressed. Skills are honed, resilience is strengthened, and the capacity for wisdom expands. Ordinary patterns of thinking and acting are replaced by a more deliberate, aware and capable approach to life. So, do not fear failure. Do not curse the moments when your plans crumble or when life seems to betray you. Every failure is a lantern illuminating the path you were meant to walk. Step through the door that opens after failure with courage, awareness and gratitude, and you will find that what once seemed like an ending was only the beginning of something far greater than you ever imagined.